Hi, this is Kenneth Wong. Welcome to DE's podcast series. Here's another episode. This one focuses on manufacturing interruptions caused by COVID-19. Designer brands producing face masks and car makers making ventilator parts. These are but two examples of how COVID-19 has drastically altered manufacturing and commerce activities related to the business of making things. Today, we speak with two on-demand manufacturing service providers, Fictiv and Xometry. First, let's get a better understanding of how they operate. Here is Xometry CEO Randy Alchala.
So Xometry is a platform for custom manufacturing, connecting customers and suppliers for a wide variety of industries, from aerospace, defense, automotive, industrial, robotics, technology. So we've got a very diverse supplier base in 46 different states in the United States. We have 1,000 suppliers in Europe, and we have a supply base in Asia too. So that enables us to service customers with a wide range of needs, from 3D printing to injection molding to die casting.
And here is Fictiv COO Jean Olivieri.
So how Fictiv is different in a few words is that we're digital manufacturing. We don't own any capital equipment, and we make sure that we understand how to align our customers' needs and specifications with the best manufacturer that can produce that part or that solution. And then we provide our guided expertise. We're a group of engineers.
With COVID-19 shutting down shop floors, first in Asia, later in Europe, and then finally back home in the US, we wonder how Xometry's customers cope with these shifting supply chains.
We saw a couple of interesting trends emerge. First, because of all the disruptions related to COVID and the damage they made to supply chains, particularly the international supply chains, you've seen companies that produce stuff in Asia looking for nearshore or onshore solutions. So U.S. companies that have been producing in China or in other Asian countries, because of disruption, saying, hey, is there an American-based option available? So we saw a shift of customers, new customers to us, saying, hey, we've used overseas before. Can we take advantage of your supply chain here domestically? So that was one important trend that we saw. And then the second trend is we saw people who were producing personal protection equipment looking for manufacturing capacity. So they were reaching out to us. That's not traditionally a sector that had utilized Xometry. We do a significant amount of business with medical device companies, but never in personal protection equipment. So those folks then came to us looking for it, and we're able to utilize our diversified manufacturing base to produce that.
A couple of months into the pandemic, Fictiv, in fact, launched its own PPE production initiative with an online form for hospitals and institutions to order them.
Yeah, well, we were one of those companies that we said, hey, we have the wherewithal, we have the knowledge, we have the supply base, we know where to get the materials, and we understand how to quickly help out, in our case, the state of California, and also America. So it was more of a philanthropic investment on Fictiv's part. But of course, it takes an investment. It took us several tens of thousands to be able to pivot on that and to be able to offer that. Certainly not a moneymaker for Fictiv, certainly not a business venture for us. It was just more of a philanthropic, let's help out citizens.
The demand for PPE and ventilator parts would likely remain for some time. It's a new normal reflected in Xometry and Fictiv's communities to different degrees.
Yeah, so we saw some Fortune 500 companies, heavy manufacturers in other industries, move into the production of personal protection equipment, as you know, from ventilator parts to masks to face shields. I think they did that for two reasons. One is because it's a national emergency or international emergency, and they wanted to play their role and harness their capacity and their capabilities. So these are companies that work with thousands of manufacturers, have elaborate supply chains. So if you're trying to solve a problem from the federal government's perspective or local or state, they're great companies to partner with. So they started moving into PPE and coming to Xometry to have us help them. Then I think some people also saw it as a revenue opportunity. So there's more demand for it. You're doing common good, but also people are purchasing it. How do they activate Xometry and others to produce it for them? So
there's been a few companies, few manufacturers that are pivoting, and if it's been within their wheelhouse to do, they are trying to adapt and trying to pull them into their current wheelhouse. But we're not seeing a huge shift from, say, a car manufacturer going into ventilator production.
For decades, outsourcing was the standard procedure in manufacturing, but the pandemic is a wake-up call to the risk involved in transportation and shipping, previously deemed highly improbable and ignored. This may be changing the equations for outsourcing.
Customers are still, in many ways, price-driven. So I think undoubtedly this pandemic has raised people's awareness of the risk of having your supply chain too dependent on overseas production. And by the way, this isn't about America versus Asia. It's about any country, wherever it's located in the world, depending on another geography for its core manufacturing. So I think certainly the pandemic has raised the awareness of that risk. But it's still not top of mind for people yet. Still, price lingers very high on that list. I think it will take some time for people to really bake in or calculate the cost of that disruption, because it has certainly led to slowdowns in productions of other goods because they couldn't get the parts from other locations. That's still not in the cost models yet. So when it starts getting factored into the cost, I think people then will look at the cost differential between two geographies differently, but we're still on the cusp of that realization or that calculation.
It has changed the equation. For the past couple of decades, we've grown into complacency with a working recipe that if you were to do these things, that this is how you could produce. And that recipe worked for quite some time with, minor adjustments. But today with COVID, we see the risks have increased. That recipe is no longer very predictable. And we've got customs, we've got tariffs, we've got, COVID manufacturing partners that are unable to produce because they've gotten hit with some sickness, some illness, and many different things. And so that recipe isn't as predictable as it was in the past couple of decades. And it's forcing us to reevaluate the supply chain now as a more risky portion of our business. If you have the resources to be able to adapt and to invest in identifying those risks and in ways of mitigating them, I would suggest doing that. If you don't have, then I would suggest collaborating with experts that do. In our case, that's what we spend a lot of time doing, is providing that guided expertise for our customers to say, hey, here's what we see, here's what we know is going on in the world, and here are higher risk areas than others, and this is what we would advise you to do, and we can help with that.
One thing is certain, with the world still on shaky ground, having more local partners and alternative sources you can reach out to during emergencies may become much more important to supply chain management and manufacturing strategies. I'm Kenneth Wong for DE. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, we are out.